Hello, my name is Bernie Clark. I'm the creator of the YinYoga.com website, and I'm also the author of Yinsights, the philosophy and practice of Yin Yoga. And I'd like to introduce you to the Yin Yoga version of the butterfly. In yoga, the butterfly is known as the most spiritual of all poses, because it is literally the meeting of the souls. From a physiological point of view, because we're coming into a forward flexion of the spine and we're holding it passively without engaging the muscles, the butterfly will help to stress the ligaments and the deep fascial networks along the spine and the back. We'll also get a nice tugging to the outside of the hips and to the hamstrings for some people. Other people also feel this through the inner groins. Now, if you tend to come into the butterfly with the legs very close, which is the traditional yang version of the butterfly, this would be a very deep stress for the adductors. And this can be lovely. This is a version of the butterfly. But in this particular pose, we don't get any stress into the hamstrings. However, if you take it to the other extreme, if we come into the pose known as caterpillar, now we have 100% hamstring stress, but no stress into the adductors. By coming into the long-legged butterfly, where we bring the soles of the feet quite far out in front of us, we get a little bit of tugging to the adductors, a little bit of tugging to the hamstrings. So it's a nice beginning pose if your intention is to go deeper into these areas later on in your practice. From an energetic point of view, we're working the meridian lines that go through the inner and outer legs. So through the inner legs, if you feel any stress or tugging through the groin, the adductor muscles, this is stimulating the liver and the kidney meridians. If you're feeling this in the outside of the leg, you're working the gallbladder meridian. So any tugging through the outside of the hips here is stimulating energy flow, chi or prana, to the gallbladder. As you come into forward flexion, if you start to feel a tugging along the back of the spine or even the back of the legs, you're stimulating energy flow to the urinary bladders. Iyengar claims that this pose will also help stimulate the kidneys, the urinary bladder, and the prostate. He also recommends it for women to help regulate the periods, stimulate energy flow to the ovaries, and help to prepare them for childbirth. For men, he offers one extra added benefit. If you happen to be suffering from heaviness in your testicles, the butterfly pose may help you. I'm not exactly sure what that is, but if you suffer from heaviness in your testicle, this might be the pose to help you. For some people, the butterfly is a pose that you should approach with some caution. If you have sciatica, if you get that pain that radiates down the leg, you may want to make sure you're sitting up on something. So make sure you have a cushion, a pillow, a bolster, something that will allow you to lift your hips up a bit higher so you can actually rotate the hips forward so that when you come into the rounding, now there isn't quite as much stress onto the sciatic nerve. For people who have lower back disorders, such as bulging disc, herniated disc, slip disc, usually flexion of the spine is contraindicated. So if you have those conditions, rather than rounding the back, allow yourself to stay fairly straight with the spine as you come forward. Only come forward so far that you don't feel yourself rounding. If that just isn't available, there are some other options in the butterfly for people with those lower back disorders. And one lovely option is to do the butterfly lying down. In this case, you can maybe grab a bolster and just put it so that you'll be lying lengthwise on the bolster. Have the soles of your feet together. In this case, you can have a little bit of a tighter butterfly and just allow yourself to come down and rest here. Now obviously you're not going to get the flexion of the spine in this position, but you'll still get the lovely stretch through the legs and opening through the hips. Another option, if even that isn't available to you, is to try to do the butterfly, but with your legs up against the wall. So in this case, you can just scoot yourself over to a wall, swing your legs up the wall, and then just bring the soles of the feet together, allowing the knees to come out to the side. The butterfly is actually quite a lovely pose for pregnant women, or if you've just had a big meal, because there's lots of space for the belly to fold forward here. If you've had neck injuries like whiplash, you may want to be careful of dropping the head down because that could put a bit too much stress into the neck. So options there is to rest your head into your hands. You can rest your elbows onto a block or onto your shins. And some people love to rest their head onto the bolster as well. So you can just come forward enough that you can rest here, maybe your forehead on the bolster. As is the case in all yoga practices, if you start to experience any sensations that could be characterized as painful, you need to stop, come out of the pose, or just back off of it. Coming into the posture is very simple. From a seated position, again, make sure you're sitting up on something. Simply slide your feet forward, bring the soles of the feet together. And again, this is the long-legged butterfly, so move your feet quite far forward so there's a nice diamond shape here. And at this point, we simply allow ourselves to come forward and allow the back to round, allowing the head to drop down. And we just come to that first place where we stop, our first edge. From here, gravity is going to do all the work. Now, one of the things to check is if you feel any pain in the knees. Because this is an external rotation of the hips, for some people, if they have very tight hips, the stress tends to go into the knees. So if you feel that, a great option is to put a block or some support underneath the thigh of the knee that feels a little bit tweaked. Or, if you like, you can have support under both legs. It's a general principle in yin yoga that if the bones are feeling supported, then the muscles can relax. So having some support here allows you to really relax into the pose, and it takes the stress off the knees. So now you can come forward. If after you're holding the pose for a while, your head starts to feel a bit heavy for the neck starts to tire, again, you can just rest your head into your hands, or rest your head onto a bolster. Another option that a lot of people like is to use a bolster between the chest and the thighs. Once again, when the body feels supported, the muscles can relax. So by being supported here, your muscles in the back can release a bit more. So some people like to hang out with the bolster this way. As we hold the pose for time, you might find that your edge recedes, you can go a bit deeper. So if that happens, you can try moving your elbows a bit more forward, let your hands rest on the floor. Eventually your elbows might come to the floor. If you're very flexible, your head might come right down to the floor. Try to bring your head inside the heels. So again, this is not the tight butterfly with the feet in quite close. Let the feet be quite far out in front of you. And then we just marinate here for time. Coming out of the pose is also very simple. We just start to push the floor away. Allow ourselves to slowly roll up. The word slowly means not fast. Now we want to move the body in the opposite direction. So we've been doing a flexion of the spine, so an extension, a back bend is quite nice here. You can simply lean back, puff your chest up, and then straighten the legs out, bounce up the knees a little bit. Now if you want a deeper extension, if you feel like you want more of a back bend, you can lengthen the neck and drop the head back, only if you have no neck issues. Another option is to come into the tabletop with your knees bent, feet on the floor. You can lift your hips up and down a few times, just to release in the lower back. More flexible students may prefer to do the slide with their legs straight, feet to the floor, and then lift up. We are also externally rotating the hips in the butterfly, so an internal rotation would be nice at this point as well. So you can try the windshield wipers. With your feet wide apart, simply drop the knees from side to side. So this is now internally rotating the hips. Some other points of interest about the butterfly. Because this is a fairly mild flexion for the spine, it's not the deepest stress of the adductors or the hamstrings as well, you can stay here for quite a while. So feel free to marinate here for 3 minutes, 5 minutes, even up to 10 or 20 minutes if you have the time. Because it works so many areas, this can be a complete yoga practice all on its own. If you only have, say, 5 minutes to do your practice, just do the butterfly. And the butterfly is very portable. You can do this while you're waiting in an airport lounge. You can do this almost anywhere. You can do it sitting on the bus. Again, one caution, a lot of people are used to doing this pose in the yang style where they have the feet in quite close. This is known as Baddha Konasana. Again, you can do this in a yin yoga style. You can stay here for 5 minutes, but by having the feet in close, it's a little bit more difficult for you to round down and allow gravity to take over. So most people in this pose won't get the stress along the spine. So if your intention is to work the spine, you want to make sure that your feet are quite far forward. However, if your intention is to work the adductors, and you really want to get deeply into this area today, then it is fine to do the tight-legged butterfly. One last piece of dessert. If you'd like a little extra spice to the practice, you can try doing the butterfly in the zipper. There are 6 meridian lines that begin and end in the toes. And these are usually the meridians of digestion. They work the spleen, the stomach, liver, gallbladder, kidneys, and urinary bladder. To do the zipper, simply interlace your toes. Just zip them up, just like you'd be interlacing your fingers if you were to put your palms together. Now at first, this might be a little tricky to do it. You might have to shove those little suckers in there. But you zip them up until they feel nice and juicy here. Now if you can't zip your toes together, that's not a good sign. There's an old Taoist saying, man with open toes has open mind. And I'm pretty sure it applies to women too. So you want to open your minds by opening up your toes. If you find it a challenge, it could be because you spend your whole life imprisoning your toes in dead animal skins. And then when you get to be 70, 80, you expect your toes to still work, and they don't, you fall down and break your hip. So you want to work the toes, zip them up. If you really can't get the toes in there, then just use your fingers in between and hold like this. And now we just let the toes marinate while we hold the butterfly. And kids love this one. So if you want to get your kids into yoga, teach them the zipper.